When you begin to think of yourself as you incorporated, your financial decisions start to look different. You stop asking, "What am I allowed to spend?" and you start asking, "What kind of life am I building?" You stop making choices out of fear. You start making them with intention. Welcome to Women's Wealth Canada, the show where we help Canadian women like you take control of their money and build your life your way. I'm Gloria Gray, financial planner and wealth manager. In today's episode, we're talking about something that many successful women don't always recognize in themselves: leadership. If you're a woman over 45 with significant wealth, whether that came from building a business or growing your career, an inheritance, or simply decades of disciplined savings, you've already demonstrated something powerful. You've demonstrated the ability to build. But the next step is something a little bit different. The next step is learning to lead your life the way a CEO leads a company. I call this idea You Incorporated. Let's talk about what that really means. Many women I work with have spent decades caring for others. They've supported partners. They've raised children, hired employees, guided clients, contributed to their communities. And along the way, their financial life often became something that simply happened around them. Someone else handled the investments. Someone else made the decisions. Someone else was in charge. But when your net worth grows and when your life enters a new chapter, something important shifts. You are no longer just participating in your financial life. You are responsible for leading it. And leadership requires a different mindset. I often tell my clients, your life is the most important enterprise you will ever run. Think about how a CEO operates. A CEO doesn't drift through the day reacting to whatever appears in front of them. They think strategically. They look at the big picture. They ask questions like, where are we going? What are our priorities? What resources do we need? And what decisions today will shape the next decade? Your financial life deserves that same level of leadership. But here's the interesting thing. You've probably already have these skills. You just may not have recognized it yet. Let me share a personal example. Before I worked in finance, I was actually a vocalist in a touring rock band. Now, that might sound like an unusual path into financial planning, but looking back, that experience taught me something incredibly important. It taught me how to pivot. It taught me how to reinvent myself. And it taught me that the skills we gain in one chapter of our lives often become the foundation for the next chapter. Eventually, I chose to study finance and investments and became an investment banker. That's someone who helps businesses find money they need to grow. And those earlier experiences helped me see the financial world differently. They helped me understand what makes businesses succeed, and therefore what makes investments succeed. And more importantly, they helped me understand people. And this is something I see all the time with my clients. A woman might come to me after a major life transition, perhaps a divorce, or a sale of a business, or the loss of a spouse. And suddenly she finds herself responsible for managing a large amount of wealth. And her first reaction is often uncertainty. She might say, I don't feel qualified to handle this. Sometimes we call that imposter syndrome. But when we start talking about her life, a different picture appears. She may have run a successful company. managed a household for decades, negotiated contracts, led teams, solved complex problems. In other words, she has already been acting as a CEO. She just hasn't applied that mindset to her personal wealth yet. One of my clients, let's call her Jenny, she experienced this exact thing. Jenny had built a successful business, but after her divorce, she suddenly found herself managing her personal finances on her own for the first time. And even though she ran a thriving company, she didn't feel confident making decisions about her own money. So I asked her a simple question: how do you run your business? And she explained that she regularly reviewed her cash flow, reinvested profits, and made strategic decisions about growth. And I said, that's exactly what we're going to do with your personal finances. Because the truth is, the principles are the same. Income becomes cash flow, investments become assets, your long-term goals become your strategic plan. And once Jenny saw it this way, something shifted. She stopped feeling like a passenger. She stepped into the role of leader. And that leadership extends beyond numbers. Another important part of being the CEO of your life is boundaries. Many women have spent years being the person who said yes. Yes to helping others. Yes to extra responsibilities. Yes to putting themselves last. But as we mature, something interesting often happens. Our tolerance for unnecessary stress, what I sometimes call BS, becomes very low. Sometimes we may even seem a little bit cranky. But it's actually a gift, because CEOs understand something essential. You cannot do everything. They must focus their time and energy on the decisions that matter most. And sometimes that means delegating. Sometimes it means saying no. Sometimes it means redefining what success looks like in the next chapter of your life. Here's how my friend Antonia Medeiros said it back in season 4, episode 3 of the podcast.
I often laugh about this with my clients. I think as we get older, motherhood does it, and I think perimenopause and menopause does it also. I think this tolerance for BS becomes extremely low
Yes.
as these moments appear in our life, right? I think motherhood is the one big step. I think after that, you're like, you can't, you just, and then perimenopause and menopause is like the icing on the cake where you're like, okay, I'm done with all of this. It's my time. Because they can see that they're not going to take it anymore. And they're like, they don't know what to do with that. They're like, I need to set boundaries. I need to start saying no. How do I do that? Like, I feel I need to do this. Like, what's going to happen? It's a chance and an opportunity to redefine yourself. You're shedding something you no longer need. Again, you let go of that and you finally embrace the next chapter of your life where you can really feel, you're free to do what you want. You're free to have, the relationships that you want. You're free to say no. You don't have to hang out with anybody you don't want to hang out with. Again, this is very empowering.
When you begin to think of yourself as you incorporated, your financial decisions start to look different. You stop asking, what am I allowed to spend? And you start asking, what kind of life am I building? You stop making choices out of fear. You start making them with intention. Your money becomes a tool, not a source of anxiety. A tool to create freedom. A tool to support the people and causes you care about. A tool to design a life that reflects your values. This shift doesn't happen overnight. Just like running a company, building your personal financial strategy takes time, reflection, and thoughtful planning. But the mindset change is powerful because once you begin to see yourself as the CEO of your life, something important happens. You stop waiting for permission. You stop assuming someone else should be in charge. And you start making decisions that move your life forward. In our next episode, we're going to talk about the next step after the CEO mindset. Because once you're leading your financial life, the natural question becomes, how do you actually use your wealth to support the life you want? How do you confidently spend from your portfolio without the fear of running out of money? Specifically, we'll talk about something I call the play check, and we'll explore it together next time. Meanwhile, if you're at a stage where you don't want to guess anymore and you'd like a personalized look at your financial situation, I offer exploratory conversations with women who want clarity without pressure, and you can find all the details on my website. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.